All right, a very good morning to you. It's the 30th anniversary of Ray Houghton sticking the ball in the England net, and the Irish Independent have helpfully reprinted vast swathes of the newspaper from that morning. Obviously, you weren't born, you don't remember any of this. Did you know the game was on a Sunday afternoon? Ireland in the 80s on a Sunday afternoon, what could you not do?
Oh, that's a good question. You could probably...
Not go to the pub.
I was going to suggest that, but then I was like, does my head just revolve around drink all the time?
Holy hour meant that it was closed between 12 and 2 or sometime around then in the afternoon on a Sunday.
So you were stuck at home.
I've completely forgotten this. It was like, so there's a full story here about how some pubs actually managed to like just ignore the fact that the law says you can't open and opened anyway. Some people took to serving food because obviously then you're a restaurant and that's like licensing, and the guards were like, you can't be in a pub during closed hours. It doesn't matter if you have a truckload of food beside you. I like the way that they were a bit more, calm with their language in the Garda press office back in those days. But my favourite story here is in an unnamed provincial town, so therefore this might not be true. Gardaí in a patrol car saw a man knocking on a pub door at 2:35 p.m. They got out and asked the publican if there was anyone on the premises. He replied, "No one at all, guard." Seconds later, there was a mighty roar from inside as Ireland scored their match-winning goal. The Gardaí turned not just a blind eye but a deaf ear and drove off, presumably to watch the game themselves. There was zero crime reported in Ireland, so the game must have kicked off at 2:30, and obviously Ireland scored 8 minutes in. So when was it 12-3? Like I don't remember when the pubs would have been closed, but it's a pretty good opportunity to just revel in some proper, like, this is before we realised what the hell was happening and the birth of the country. The letters page is interesting. There's two other things I want to say. Yeah, the letters page. The main letter is Church and State, and it's written by Michael McKillen, the vice chairperson of the campaign to separate Church and State. So this is 1988, and that still hasn't happened. And then the player ratings, like, what's the lowest player rating? Ireland have beaten England 1-0 in Stuttgart in the European Championships. The lowest player rating that anybody's going to get in a day like that. What do you expect it to be?
Well, it's not going to be like the current rugby player ratings where the lowest, even if Ireland lose, would be like a 6. But presumably, by the way you're talking there was actually some fairly low player ratings dished out.
What would you expect? Like, I mean, I think
we've just beaten England 1-0, so I would expect the lowest to be 7.
9s and 10s, generally. It's like, but no, Mick McCarthy gets a 6. Usually the rock of the Irish rearguard, Mick was a little exposed for pace when the English floated the ball over the top. Doubt had been expressed about the Celtic player's fitness before the game, and he was not at his sharpest. Everybody else gets a minimum of 7. Ray Houghton gets a 10. Packy Bonner only gets a 9, which, that's just cruel. Roddy Whelan gets a 9. Paul McGrath, 7. Tony Galvin, 7. Frank Stapleton, 8. John Aldridge, 9, even though he doesn't score. And, so... even in his moment of triumph, Big Mick is only a 6 out of 10.
Well, I presume back then you wouldn't have got the Irish Independent exported to Germany, so whoever the journalist in question was, they would have been safe from the wrath of Mick McCarthy.
I don't know. They probably would have been.
Well, considering it's printed in today's paper, it's clearly got around. If it's managed to warp time, it's probably managed to warp geography a small bit as well. So maybe Mick McCarthy did see it, but
I don't know if they actually name the player ratings either. That's the other kind of way of getting through that.
That's actually a good idea, as in don't name the player ratings, therefore you're going to save your reputation, or you're going to save your relationship with the players. It's plenty of things we can learn from 1988, except for like closing the pubs at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, not a good idea.
So what was this tween ocean of Irish society in 1988 being a place where you go to mass on a Sunday and go home is actually the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
wow.
I can't believe that they didn't use the Euros. They didn't spot the possibility of using the Euros as a means of modernising society and keeping the pubs open.
They were into all those salacious things in Germany though, weren't they? Like alcohol on a Sunday. Absolute.
No, I mean the Irish politicians who were like backboned by publicans didn't go, ooh, this is a good chance for us to get rid of that Sunday bullshit. But obviously by the time 1990 rolled around, maybe they copped on.
Maybe I'm trying to think, was any of them on a Sunday, because it's, the day of our Lord year, so that kind of got in the way of Stuttgart in 1988. Maybe the people who were on the Euros should have thought about that before they organised Ireland to play on a Sunday.
Yeah, or else they thought, oh, here's your chance, lads, we're throwing you a bone. Here's what's coming up on the show today. Craig Breen has been sending us videos from the rally in Sardinia over the last while. We've put them all together into a beautiful package. We'll give you some Sardinia envy at around about 8:30. The refereeing crisis in the GAA, we'll talk about that at around about 8:40 with a few interested parties. We'll talk about the Irish women's national team. Adrian Barry is over in Stavanger, I think. Certainly, is he in Stavanger?
Yes, I'm going to say.
Okay, might be wrong about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later with Adrian Barry. They're playing Norway tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it is the banker. Get the full details of exactly where Uncle Travelling Matt is a little bit later on. And talking about the 1998 World Cup, basically this is a preview of England in the World Cup in 2018 with Daniel Harris. Today's the day as well that we're going to find out who hosts the next World Cup.
Yeah, the 2020, not the next one, but the 2026 World Cup. The next one's obviously in Qatar.
Yeah.
It's the two world superpowers going up against each other, the United States, Canada and Mexico on one side and Morocco on the other side. So really it's going to be a titanic battle, a titanic tussle between these two heavyweights, and it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. For the first time ever, actually, I think, we'll actually be able to see a country-by-country breakdown of how each country votes in terms of where they want the World Cup to be hosted. Will Ireland vote for Morocco, or will they vote for USA, Canada, Mexico, which of course has been heavily linked with Donald Trump, considering he's actually taken to Twitter to tell people to, not get involved and not meddle with this process. And everybody should vote in a very transparent manner.
What was he saying? What was it?
If I can pull out the Guardian there for a sec, I'll actually get his quotes for you. So naturally, it's not just the people on the Moroccan side of things who are trying to push the Donald Trump narrative here that he is involved in this bid. He's been doing it himself. He said, "It would be a shame if countries we always support were to lobby against the US bid. Why should we be supporting these countries when they don't support us, including at the United Nations?" He tweeted that in April, and then FIFA responded to that by emphasising its guidelines against undue influence by governments. And then a week later, Trump just tweeted again saying African countries and countries throughout the world, he wanted to support the US bid, warning them, "We will be watching very closely." So there is not a lot of direct pressure there coming from Donald Trump, but a lot of under the table sort of pressure there, saying there will be consequences if you don't manage to give us your vote for the FIFA World Cup, which I guess it's better than the kind of softer sort of version of this that we've seen over the past couple of decades when it comes to FIFA and when it comes to deciding where the World Cup is going to go.
If you don't vote for us, you won't get whatever, 5 million quid.
Yeah, at least if you tweet it, it's fairly obvious what your intentions are. And
yeah.
I'd rather know what your intentions are rather than some sort of under the table dealing, but it's like the fact that it's transparent is probably going a step too far. Who knows where this is going to go? You have to reveal who you are voting for. You don't have to reveal the reasons why you're voting for them.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, does it? Ultimately, if you're bought, you're going to go, yeah, I voted for them. They had the best bid.
Well, except for the fact that there has been an independent review of these bids, like they did for the Rugby World Cup, and the USA, Canada, Mexico bid absolutely trounced the Moroccan bid. Morocco said they have to build 9 stadiums. USA are good to go.
Yeah, I mean, we have to build the stadiums. Okay, it's a chronic waste of taxpayers' money, and it's a terrible indictment of any society that they would actually want to do this in the first place. But notwithstanding that, it's not that hard to build stadiums. You can do it in a short period of time. They've got 8 years.
They do. They've also bidded for this thing a lot of times in the past, haven't they? I'm trying to think, was it 94, 98, 06, 2010, something they've bidded for this thing 4 or 5 times at this point.
Wow, 5th time's a charm, Owen.
It is. 5th time really is a charm.
That's why that saying exists.
And, it could be a beautiful opportunity to bring the Americans together, is all I'm saying here in 2026. Who knows what sort of shape the world will be in at that point. We've moved a long time from the likes of 1988 when the pubs were closed on a Sunday afternoon to whatever this point is we are in society.
Well, let's get a flavour of what's happening in Russia. Our man John Duggan is there. Here's the first of his travelling dispatches. Yeah, I'm jealous now. That's all it took.
Just one video of Colombian singers and an awkward TV. I wonder, was that TV man live at the time? Or it kind of looked like he was trying to say hello.
Yeah, he's getting prepped for it. We have one more. Yeah, if you want to meet up with John, I'm sure you'll find him somewhere in Russia. Just use the hashtag OTB Russia. But I do like the Uruguay flag. I love their jerseys. I love everything about Uruguay at the World Cup, especially the bites. Come on, Uruguay.
Especially the bites.
Yeah.
What do you mean by the bites?
Luis Suarez bit somebody at the last World Cup. That's
yes,
for Uruguay.
I remember that.
He's a footballer.
When he said plural bite, I thought that it was more than one bite. I thought it was some sort of mosquito joke that I wasn't in on. You know. That's what happens here in the morning. Mosquito jokes get made and they go over my head.
Dubs fear Cluxton will miss the Laois clash. This is the lead story on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. CJ Stander, maybe we needed this Australia wake-up call. And that's Neymar looking sharp in his Brazil suit. They have arrived in Sochi. They're in Sochi ahead of the start of the World Cup. You wouldn't be surprised if Dublin didn't rush Cluxton back for this game. It's like, he's injured, take it easy, don't need him for this. Going to win by 10/15 points anyway. What's the big deal?
Yeah, he's going to be completely fine. Is there an actual sort of time zone there in terms of when he's going to be?
No.
He's going to be back.
And also it's like he's got a lower back injury. It's like, well, what does that actually mean?
It's a tricky one. It's going to be a different sort of challenge. It's going to be a different sort of narrative around this game now, because we know that he is so unbelievably vital to their hopes later on in the championship. And is he the sort of player, because he's so active within the game plan, that he almost needs that freshness, that if he does miss a game or two, that a rustiness builds up in his kick-out game? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I would say that he's so robotic at this point in terms of his kick-outs that he's going to be fine whenever he comes back in.
That's an interesting question, because you think of the league in recent seasons, there were various league campaigns where he would have been in and out and rested for games. But this year I think he played almost every minute of every game. So that is interesting. Like, why at this stage of his career do they feel the need to give him all those games? And what will the impact be for the future in that one? So Holy Hour finished in October 2000.
Oh my God.
And it was 2 to 4 p.m. It's like, well, I guess it's, you go to Mass and then you have to go home and have your Sunday dinner and lie in the stomach before you go to the pub to puke it all up at around about 8 o'clock that evening. That's what the assumption was it? Like, who has Mass between 2 and 4 anyway?
Yeah, that's a strange one. I think that's more of a city phenomenon, isn't it?
Nicholas Canny. Is it?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
I hadn't heard of it until
you came up to the big smoke.
Yeah, until 2 weeks ago, actually.
What?
And I'd heard that
Who's talking to you about Mass at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon?
I can't remember. Somebody wasn't...
Oh, let's go to the match. No, I've got to go to Mass.
Yeah, so there was some sort of incident regarding a Mass in the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday, and I was like, who the hell does that? You get that out of the way on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning sort of thing, if that's what you're into.
Yeah, all right. On to the Times Ireland edition. Their lead this morning is Sexton set to return for the second test. And then Tyrone's spat is uncalled for, says Mulligan. This is great. It's like, this spat is uncalled for, but why is Gavin Devlin getting involved in this? He shouldn't have said anything. I don't think he should have come out and said, but he did. Questioning Sean's captaincy credentials was always going to cause a stir and make a bigger story of the whole thing. Unlike Owen Mulligan saying that Gavin Devlin shouldn't have questioned the captaincy, because that's the end of the story now. That's definitely not going to get picked up in the newspapers and roll us on into week 6 of this kind of boring conflict now.
We need to start playing Tyrone conflict bingo at this point. Just get a graphic with all the faces of all the prominent Tyrone media personalities, and who hasn't spoken about it at this point. I don't think anybody has. And
just to make sure that Mulligan is seen to be an equal opportunities destroyer here, I don't think Gavin Devlin should have said what he did, but I don't think Sean Kavanagh should have said what he did either. It's like, I've lost that quote now, sorry. Kavanagh was wrong to have criticised Hart. His brother has flourished in a role that Mickey Hart has created especially for him, and has become the best sweeper in the country. So there you go. That's Owen Mulligan, who Brian McGuigan told us in the WhatsApp group that the O3 team have started with. Who'd win in the fight between Gavin Devlin and Sean Kavanagh? Maybe we'll get to find out. That O3 team are playing Armagh O3 in a friendly fundraiser challenge in the next couple of weeks.
And is Mickey Hart going to be the manager of the O3 Tyrone team?
Yeah.
I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
It's...
There's a lot of managers there.
It's got to the point now, like, I love these sort of spats, and it was fantastic at the start, but it's getting a little bit boring now.
Put it away?
It's kind of like, okay, we get it. We get it that you can just... you've got so many different sort of people who are well able to form an opinion and articulate it, but all the opinions have been taken at this point. There is no fresh angle to put on this thing. Like, everybody's made the point that Colin Kavanagh must be feeling pretty awkward. Everybody must be making the point that Sean Kavanagh maybe shouldn't or should have done what he did, and Gavin Devlin similarly.
Sorry, Sean Kavanagh has to do exactly what he's getting paid to do, because otherwise he'd be a crap pundit, and he's not. He's a really good pundit, and he's making the point that his experience shows that this team have not developed forward, and this is his theory about why. I think he was well within his rights, not just to say it, but he kind of had to say what he thought was.
I think he should have said it, yeah. Exactly. It was not just within his rights. Absolutely correct decision.
They seem to have leaked the team in dispatches again this week ahead of the second test. It looks like Sexton's going to come in. It looks like Ringrose is going to partner Henshaw. Bundy Aki is going to make way. So Robbie Henshaw goes to 12, and Ringrose comes in at 13, and Dan Levy and Tyg Byrne are also going to play, and Devin Toner is also going to play. So I don't know if that means that James Ryan gets dropped, or if Tyg Byrne comes into the back row, and do they take the opportunity to take Peter O'Mahony out and put Johnny Sexton in, and then we don't know who the captain is until the third test, or is Peter O'Mahony now the Ireland captain and that's just it?
Well, that would be a very complex way of trying to just keep from the public who Joe Schmidt believes to be his backup captain, Rory Best, wouldn't it? Well,
his new captain, I suspect.
His new captain, yeah.
Like, I don't think...
Is Best now coming back to become Ireland captain again?
Who knows? I mean, you wouldn't be surprised, would you, if in November they were like, look, we're not sure you're going to make it. You've got to make sure that you look after your fitness and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. On to the Irish Times today, and this piece from Jim McGuinness is pretty good. It's an analysis of the Tyrone Meath game. Full of praise, actually, for Meath in terms of their fitness, their aggression, the way they approached the match, but just that they needed to control that temper a little bit, and that ultimately some stupid frees, which the referees are looking for, cost them really dearly, but that he's got a lot of praise for Conor McCaskey, who he says looked very sharp and could actually have quite a role to play.
Described as Peter Canavan-esque, I think, in that
a little later on in the summer. So this is the horror injury that Stephen Atried suffered at the weekend. Unbelievable bravery, and ends up with a double fracture in his skull, and then just analysis of the qualifier draws as well. So that was it, yeah. And Kelly Harrington has won a bronze medal in the boxing in that one. So what have I got next? I have the Irish Examiner next. Why always Waterford? Tony Brown says Deja paying the price for being too nice. That's obviously a Why Always Me, Mario Balotelli reference there. And Mike Quirk says, feeling cheated by a referee's mistake? Deal with it. He's got zero tolerance for people whining about referees in the aftermath of games. Basically pointing out there was a club game that he had postponed his honeymoon for, that they lost, that the teammates and backroom team were going after the referee for it. He ends up protecting the referee and is declared a saint for it, but ultimately he's protecting the referee because he feels like they kicked 9 wides, and if maybe they hadn't kicked 9 wides, the game wouldn't have been in the melting pot, and therefore you wouldn't have been at the mercy of the referee, which is a fair point, except in the instance where with the last kick of the game you get the opportunity to send the game into double over extra time.
Yeah, there is kind of are we now pushing the idea that the acceptance of terrible refereeing has to become the norm rather than like an actual holding of higher standards? Of course there has to be a holding of higher standards on the players and the management side when it comes to actually dealing with a fellow human being, which is to not absolutely lambast them in a horrible fashion. How can we help you get better in the next round? Exactly. How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? And we will continue to offer you a guard escort. Yes. The only thing is it just continues to get worse almost. It seems like we're on a slope going downwards rather than... Unfortunately, Irish people are prone to outbreaks of violence and stupid machismo, and we like to be seen to be shouting at people. I know how to solve this. We should put a ban on going to the pub on a Sunday. And that would... Between 2 and 4. Between 2 and 4. Just between 2 and 4, that'd work. So bittersweet. This is the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Clare's historic victory tinged with sadness. And then CJ Stander, he is a big, big man. CJ Stander is a big man. They are big arms. That is the whole circumference of his arm there. It's about the same size as Eoin Sheahan. It's like the Ireland players were doing a weight session yesterday in front of the cameras, and CJ got the guns out. Yeah, like when the cameras come in, you got to get the guns out. I always say that I'd always imagine that's a fairly awkward scenario where it's like you're going to come and perv over me with your camera. Exactly, and there's some interesting images of like Tadhg Furlong in there as well. kind of straight up shots, and it's like, just let me do my weights here for a moment, will you?
Yeah. Andrew Porter's lifting. He seems to be lifting a lot more than John Cooney is.
Well, no surprise there. But Andrew Porter obviously comes from a weightlifting background, doesn't he?
Does he? Is that
Or some sort of bodybuilding background, whatever the difference is there, the subtle difference between weightlifting and bodybuilding. Yeah, so I'm not sure.
You should do an investigation into the weightlifting and / bodybuilding culture and just see what the difference is.
I'll just sneak undercover into a gym, and they won't notice that I'm not a bodybuilder at all.
I think it would be interesting for as a social experiment.
I think it would be.
I'm not
very,
saying
very
you have to do the lifting or the bodybuilding, but I mean, if you get,
are you saying that I'm not able to?
If you get into it, it's up to you.
Absolutely, I'm going to become the next great bodybuilder.
The Racing Post, O'Brien targets clash with Justify in Classic. This is Aidan O'Brien indicating that Kentucky Derby flop Mendelssohn will travel to the US for 2 more dirt runs in preparation for a Breeders' Cup Classic showdown with Triple Crown hero Justify. And then that is a story about US ace Ward primed for action with his best Royal Ascot team. This is Wesley Ward, who is coming over. Locked and loaded is the headline there.
On the back of the Herald this morning, they're going with that injury story. 2 skippers on the ropes is the headline here. Atried fractured skull as Cluxton struggles. You've also got, it's 30 years since Ray's golden goal. Ray Houghton put ball in the English net. It's 30 years today. On the back of the Mirror, it's O'Moore misery. Leash captain Atried ruled out a decider with a fractured skull. While Wembley's yours for £1 billion. This is John Cross's story today in the Mirror. He says that FAA chiefs have opened up the sale of Wembley to the highest bidder in the hope of making £1 billion. Of course, there was that story a few weeks ago that the NFL or an NFL franchise are planning on purchasing Wembley. Shahid Khan had offered £600 million, but the FA have strong interest now from 3 other potential buyers. So it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. A very... I'm not sure, is it a worrying development or kind of just a normal sign of the times that Wembley's going to get bought by an NFL team?
Class.
Do you think it's class?
Yeah, we're going to have an NFL team in London. It's class. No?
It is the... Are they going to change it to the IFL then, the International Football League?
No, then, no. It's the NFL. It doesn't matter.
But the N stands for national. It's no longer national.
It's international.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
International.
I mean, that's definitely the most important. That's the big story here.
It is. All I care about is
NFL team in London. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Why not?
It does not kind of cheapen the idea that this is America's game, that this is... Like, it can have an international appeal without having to have an international team.
But who cares about it cheapening the idea of being America's game? What difference does that make?
Like, it's American football.
You'll be able to go and watch games.
You can still do that when they come over.
In your own time slot, and it'd be like a thing.
It's not about us. It's about... Think about all those people who actually have this as their thing. Like,
who love Jacksonville, the 4,500 people who buy season tickets there.
Yeah, and who just sit in a hot tub and watch their team play week in, week out.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel sorry for those people who live in Jacksonville, Florida.
I really do. I feel sorry for them as well. Like, but imagine that, like, Shahid Khan just saying, listen, people of Jacksonville, you may be rich enough to afford a hot tub, but money doesn't buy love, and we're leaving, and we're going to a country that doesn't even play this game on an indigenous level. Like, it's corporate cheapness gone mad, isn't it?
It's American football for Europeans. I'm delighted.
On the back of the Star this morning, it is Ron of the Best. Cristiano Ronaldo's backing Mo Salah to join the race for Best FIFA Men's Player, while Munley praises Atried bravery. Then you've also got Saints move for Brazunu. So Southampton are weighing up a bid for Shamrock Rovers teenage keeper Gavin Bazunu. That's an exclusive there by Paul Lennon. He's made his first team debut in Saturday's win over Bray, actually, so he's pretty new to the first team there, but obviously Southampton have got their scouts on the ground over here. That'll be a massive move for him. You're yet again kind of dominating things everywhere, really. There's supplements left, right and centre. On the back of the Sun, cunning plan. Greg's poised for top flight return after 8-year absence, while Mayo for Fox ache. Brian Fox cursed Tipperary's luck for drawing Mayo in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship qualifiers.
That's the headline of the day.
It's for once and once only, the tab of the morning to you has gone over my head. It's usually you, in fairness. And
read it again.
Go on, lord it over me. Mayo for Fox's sake. There we go. Landed, absolute swish.
Read it again.
I get it. Mayo, for fuck's sake. It's fantastic headline. Congratulations to all at the Sun. Tablet morning to you, indeed.
Classic. What is this? Why? That's not funny.
I was like, here's an obscure cultural reference from 1986 that Jerry's going to lord it over me with once again.
Yeah.
On the back of The Guardian, it's next stop Russia. Our desire and determination has brought team closer to fans, says Southgate. There's also an exclusive interview with Roberto Martinez done by Donald McRae here, which is relatively interesting. He keeps his cards close enough to his chest because apparently they've sat down here for like 70, 80 minutes. Just a one-on-one interview, despite the fact that the World Cup is around the corner, and there's good stuff in it, but for 80 minutes I'd say Roberto Martinez was keeping his cards relatively close to his chest. What I hadn't realised about this was, obviously with Christophe Terreur on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how, well, he was pretty clear that he isn't as big as Roberto Martinez fan. Terreur is a Belgian football journalist, and it seems that even within the camp there has been some snide remarks made about Roberto Martinez, and he cites this incident last November after Belgium drew with Mexico on a 3-3 scoreline, that Kevin De Bruyne came out afterwards and said Mexico were tactically better than us.
Yeah.
As long as there's no good tactical system, we face difficulties. It's a pity we have not yet found a solution. We are playing a very defensive system, but our team is filled with many attacking players. And Martinez talks about this in this article and says that Kevin's just basically showing how much he cares. The reason for talking was total honesty, and it is healthy. There is a culture here of trying to understand things from a tactical point of view, which I like. I'm not asking every player to give their view in public, but Kevin said it in a way of wanting us to improve. He is growing into a big leadership role. So obviously you're not going to throw your own player under the bus before one of the biggest moments in your managerial career.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's
right there. Like the seeds of Belgium's discontent and failure are right there from that De Bruyne thing. And like I think we talked about that at the time, about how like this is weird that he is so public about it, and it was a friendly.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It was like a meaningless friendly, but De Bruyne is so pissed off about it afterwards.
Yeah, and Lukaku has done something similar as well, where he's spoken about tactics where he wouldn't be particularly happy with them, and Roberto Martinez talks about them in the piece as well and says, oh, that was only a 5-minute soundbite in the middle of a 30-minute piece and it was completely taken out of context. So there's a little bit of firefighting by the sounds of things from Roberto Martinez at the moment, or else he's just genuinely very forgiving towards his players. Also talks up Thierry Henry and the role of Henry in the squad, despite the fact that Terreur, when he was on the show recently, said that he's always last into the dressing room and first one out of it and stuff like that. So
on his private jet.
On his private jet. Not exactly a huge work ethic, but maybe he doesn't need a big work ethic. Maybe he's an absolute genius inside in the dressing room and we don't know about it just yet. Finally for me then, on the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section, we want to make country proud. Kane and Southgate issue rallying cry as England get ready to head to Russia. It's all the World Cup build-up, kind of envious of it all when it comes to the UK press at the moment. So there we go, watching England jet off, unfortunately.
Are you going to be supporting England?
I'd like this group of players. I don't have any particular affinity towards England. I'm not one of those people who kind of get out the pitchforks whenever they're playing and are going to roar around Panama and Tunisia. I want to see England get out of the group because I want the knockout stages to be entertaining. And I think they will get out of the group. I think they'll come second. And I think they're going to get to a quarter-final this year, Ger. A quarter-final exit. The good old-fashioned England way.
If they don't top their group, it's probably going to be Germany in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, well, it's going to be Germany or Brazil in the quarterfinals, regardless of how they get on.
If they top their group. Okay.
Yeah, they're on the tough side of the draw in the last 8.
Right. Okay. So Waterford man Craig Breen is someone that we've been keeping a very close eye on here on OTB AM. He's been competing at the Rally Italia Sardinia in Sardinia and sending us back an exclusive video diary. Here he is taking us through his car.
So I'm going to run through with you quickly my office, my baby, the C3 WRC, and obviously the car is sitting ready now, ready to start the rally for the rest of the weekend. So we'll take the opportunity during the quiet time to go through some of the finer details. Obviously this is a gravel rally, so yeah, the car is set up in gravel specification. You can see here the suspension. It's got really long travel. That's to put up with the rough and undulating roads that we have here, and vastly different to what you would see in a normal road car. Obviously the brakes here are really big. Okay, they're slightly smaller than what we would have on tarmac. We run a 15-inch wheel here on gravel rallies in comparison to the 18-inch wheel on tarmac. You've got the ducting in here to keep the brakes cool. Various other pipes, obviously brake lines, anti-roll bars. This is obviously the damper, and you've got the hydraulic canister for all the oil for the damper. Obviously similar enough situation at the rear. It's a 4-wheel drive, so each corner of the car is quite similar. So we'll just have a quick little look inside. So as you can imagine, it's fairly hot and stuffy in here at times. We've got no air conditioning because that takes up a bit of weight. But what we do have is we've got a roof vent here, which it's got a scoop on the roof of the car, which you'll see has got a tricolour. It was quite an important feature. So that scoops in some fresh air and points us in towards myself and Scott. 2 for me, 1 for Scott. Priority goes to the driver, unfortunately. For the rest, one of the other key features is the gear shift. It's done by a paddle, like a semi-automatic, but this is a real efficient semi-automatic gearbox, should we say. So I pull the lever towards me to go up the gears, and then I push it away to go back down the gears. And it's a bit like a computer game. You're just flicking up and down the gears through the stage, so it's really cool. Here is we've got the handbrake, fly-off handbrake, so I don't need to use the clutch. I can just pull that, and it will lock the rear wheels whenever I want. And it's a bit of a clothes hanger on the road section to keep my balaclava dried out. And we've got the 3 pedals on the floor here. They're floor mounted, which is the inverse of what you would see in a normal car. Obviously, a normal car comes from the top, but here it's floor mounted to try to keep the centre of gravity down. A big throttle pedal, a bigger brake pedal, and then pretty much a non-existent clutch pedal, because we don't need to use the clutch during the stage. It's just to get us off the start line, and then it's primarily right foot on the throttle, left foot on the brake for all of the stage. So and then we have the steering wheel. I've got all my different controls here. I can put the car in and out of stage mode on this, so I can put the car into stage mode with the mix button. This is for the headlamps, for the extra lights when we're doing rallies in dark. I've got different throttle maps, I've got different differential maps. The differential in the car is active, so we can change the mapping given what stages, what type of conditions we have on the stages. This is to talk to the team when you have a radio. I've got a trip meter, and then some of the standard features that would be on normal road cars, because we have to drive on obviously public road sections between the stages. So my indicator is here, turn when I want to turn right, push it that way, left that way. This is to put a high beam, and this is to give the windscreen a bit of a wash, and this is to control my wipers faster and slower. So a lot of things going on, a lot of things for my little brain to try and take in when we're in the stage, but luckily it's in quite a easy layout, and I can remember it and try to get the easiest buttons at hand as I'm in the stage. So probably the most important features that we have are the safety features. So this is a 6-point harness that keeps it locked into the car, and more importantly locked into the seat nice and tight. And if we do get ourselves into trouble, which can happen unfortunately from time to time, this will keep us safe. And we've got various other things. The roll cage here, which is we've got like a safety cell around us, so in the event of a rollover, the car will stay, or the cabin here should stay, relatively speaking, quite intact. And we've got lots of safety padding, we've got lots of foam. This is not just normal foam, it's got a lot of intensive testing to withstand the impact of a side impact here. And you'll see that even where I sit in the car, I sit quite far back, and against the people here, this is all to try to be as safe as possible in the event of a side impact. So it's, dare I say, as safe as it can be, and it gives myself and Scott the confidence that we need to drive.
Yeah, class. I hope you've been enjoying the video series that we've been doing with Craig Breen over the course of the Sardinia event. He's back in action in about 6 weeks' time, and it looks like the course there is going to be one that definitely suits him. So we'll catch up with Craig in a little while to check in on how he's doing. Things didn't go his way really in Sardinia at the weekend, but we're very grateful for that insight into it, and I think certainly around these parts it's definitely whetted our appetite for a bit more World Rally Championship coverage. Anyway, so let's move on. We're going to talk a bit more rugby. Just to let you know, we've got Paul Rouse, the Offaly football manager, that is coming up a little bit later on, as opposed to the historian, academic and journalist. It's now the Offaly football manager. He's going to join us, having masterminded Offaly football's first victory in 2 decades against Northern opposition. Was it 3 decades? Was it 81? What's that, 30 years? Yeah. Nearly 40 years.
I know, it's incredible to think that, isn't it? Remember 81.
So, what?
Remember 81, God, it's almost 40 years ago, can you believe it?
Shut up, Owen. Here's Eddie O'Sullivan on Wednesday Night Rugby last night, chatting about Ireland's dodgy defence out wide.
Ireland's problem with their defence goes back to the fact that we've been conceding 3 tries in a lot of our games this year. If you go back to the autumn, we had 3 tries against Argentina. Then the spring we had 3 tries against Italy, 3 tries against Wales, 3 tries against England. It could have been 3 last Saturday. Like, that's not a good number for us, 3 tries. It's hard to win a game when you concede 3 tries. But that up and in is a kind of a reaction to the fact that we're very narrow, and if you go up and in, you can use a narrow defence if it works. But if it doesn't work, you're going to get skinned on the outside. So we're still very narrow, and I think Andy Farrell thought the up and in might solve it, and the answer to that, then Australia, whatever about any other team, it doesn't work. So he's got to rethink that for next week. Or if that's based on the outside next week, I guarantee Australia are going to be even better at exploiting it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that was Eddie O'Sullivan on Monday Night Rugby last night. Also, Matt Williams giving us a bit of an insight into Ireland's lack of creativity.
They reminded me of the way they played against Wales, where they thought, well, we'll just take it route one, pass off the 9 and we'll bash them up. And when they didn't bash Australia up there weren't a lot of answers. And part of that is because Robbie Henshaw's playing 13. He's a great player, but he's a great 12. We had 2 very good 12s on the field. I think Ringrose coming back in at 13 will give us some more options. But and obviously Joey Carberry under pressure. There was a number of reasons for that performance. But if Ireland can't get a little more creative, and I believe they can with Sexton and Ringrose in, and they keep going route one, they'll lose in Melbourne. They've got to score some tries. As simple as that. I mean, it's, as Shane Horgan once said to me, I said it to him, you've got to score tries. He said, really, it's been going a fair while, Matt, but they do have to score those tries. And the last thing that I concur with Eddie, to beat Joe Schmidt, a team that Joe Schmidt coaches, you've got to beat them in the kicking game. Every game they lose in the kicking game. And that's from talking from guys that have been around him at Leinster and the national side. And it was a real insight for me when they brought that up. Now, Michael Checker spent a lot of time in the Six Nations watching Ireland play. And he was talking to a lot of old players. He was doing the Irish work there where he'd done so much work before. And I thought he got his kicking game and his kicking strategy absolutely spot on. They put huge pressure on Conor Murray back where he catches those box kicks, and Robbie Kearney, and we saw Robbie Kearney make an error that he never makes.
Yeah, it's funny how Australia outkicked Ireland, and it's like, so they can just look at what we do really well, do it better than us, and beat us. It's not a good sign, is it? It
was a sort of a general rude awakening in terms of what the Southern Hemisphere opposition actually does bring, that they're good at everything, that it's like you can't have a full systems failure really going up against Southern Hemisphere opposition, except for some of the crap Springbok teams we've happened to come up against over the last couple of years.
And they seem to
we're
have
no longer going to be crap.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get that in the Six Nations. If Wales or England have an off year, it's like, actually, we've been able to match them in every single department and outperform them quite substantially in many departments. And usually when it comes to Ireland, it's the kicking game. But it seems that once we get outperformed in that department, which is never really beyond the realms of possibility when it comes to a Southern Hemisphere team, we're in a bit of trouble.
A lot of nostalgia in the papers today for Euro 88. It is the 30th anniversary of Ray Houghton putting the ball in the England net and our 1-0 win. We're going to talk about the 1998 World Cup and England's performance at that World Cup with Daniel Harris in a minute. But first we're looking back to 1986 and Mexico. Pat Nevin was on the football show last night talking about how he found out that Alex Ferguson was not going to bring him to the World Cup in 86.
So Sir Alec had brought me into the squad. I played against England, and he phoned me up just before it. It was a tight one. Scotland had a lot of good players, and Davy Cooper was a great player. Strachan was in that sort of position as well. We had a lot of good. I mean, we had a serious amount of top forwards, but Sir Alec Ferguson phoned me up just before it. He said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to take you for this one. We've got a really strong squad, but just to let you know, if anything goes wrong, you're the first man that I'm going to phone up and get you in." So I went into training the next day and I met David Speedy. David Speedy at Chelsea said to me, "I got a phone call for Alec Ferguson last night. He's not taking me, but he says I'm the first man that he's going to bring." Very good.
That's man management.
To be honest, I didn't even take it badly. I just thought, no. If I'm not absolutely the number one, then give it to somebody else. The tough one for me actually was the next one. 1990, because I was, at Everton doing well, but I got a cruciate injury, and I was over it, and I'd played in the cup final before that, and I was pretty disappointed at missing that one. But once again, I was in the squad right up till before the championship. Left out the squad and then was in the squad straight after it.
Oh.
And it happened again in 94.
Yeah.
So 3 times I was in the squad before the World Cup, dropped, and then the squad after the World Cup. So
sickening.
I'm trying really hard not to sound particularly bitter about it.
Yeah, I can understand why you'd be a bit bitter after something like that. Speaking of players left out of World Cup squads, the build-up to the 1998 World Cup from an England perspective was pretty interesting. This is one of those tournaments that, from England's perspective, lives in infamy, and this is what we're going to talk about in just a moment. I would let you know that if anybody wants to get in touch with us here, you can tweet the show at Off The Ball, or you can text us here. You can't text us of a morning. You can tweet us at Off The Ball AM.
You've got your own number if you want.
Yeah, we should get our own WhatsApp, shouldn't we? Just a random. Yeah, we will. We will do that. That was many of the off the word spoke true in jest is the phrase that I was looking for there. Yeah, you can send us your abuse and whatever those pictures that we'll have to pixelate out for you of a morning. Daniel Harris is on the line. Good morning, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. We're talking about the 1998 World Cup here as maybe a means of comparing, contrasting how England might do 20 years on in Russia. But the build-up to the World Cup in 98 was kind of overshadowed somewhat by the decision not to bring Paul Gascoigne. And yet, in retrospect, it looks like probably it was a good idea, right?
Yeah, I think history has treated Glenn Hoddle nicely on that one. I think perhaps he maybe should have made sure that decision didn't become a flashpoint by making it earlier than he did, so that he didn't get rid of a few players who thought they might be going to the World Cup just before the World Cup. But the actual decision to get rid of Gaza, it's hard to say that wasn't the right one. In fact, I'm pretty sure that was the right one. And it gave us some interesting stories in the meantime.
So was the timing the issue around that? Or, like, was there a better way to handle that? Or was it actually by bringing Gaza in, that meant that was what the focus was on and kind of actually allowed the rest of the squad to develop in the background?
I guess it's sort of, you gave Gaza the opportunity to then flip. And then you could say, well, clearly I can't take that person to the World Cup if that's what they're going to do. And Gascoigne was quite close to finish by then anyway. And it then gave him the opportunity to promote Paul Scholes, who'd done really well in the tournoi a year earlier. But no, I think that just on a human level, having that situation where you have a squad that is too big for the amount of people you're allowed to take to the World Cup with you, I just don't imagine it can be good for anyone to then cull that squad very obviously, because you've got then people are forming bonds, and you have the members of the squad who are going, seeing their mates, getting told that they're not going to the World Cup, and you have all the tears and the anger that comes with that. I just don't believe that can be particularly good for morale. So
just to recap, the Euros in '96 was this transcendent moment for English football, which ultimately ends in heartbreaking failure. The tournament was brilliant. It was kind of the re-emergence of English football on the world stage as something, a force for positive. The football was great. You know, Gaza nearly stretches to get the winner against Germany in extra time. And, there's enough there for everybody to think, ooh, this is actually really potentially interesting into the future. And then Terry Venables is no longer the head coach and Glenn Hoddle takes over, and the atmosphere changes a little bit almost immediately.
It's quite funny, that whole Euro 1996 thing, because England played well in that tournament for not very long at all. Rubbish against Switzerland in the first game, rubbish for most of the game against Scotland, good for 20 minutes against Holland, rubbish for most of the game against Spain and lucky to get through on penalties, and then they played really well against Germany. And I think Venables actually doesn't get as much heat as perhaps he earned. So I'd forgotten until quite recently that in that game against Germany, he played the same 11 for 120 minutes in a semi-final of a European competition. And on the bench, you had Robbie Fowler and Les Ferdinand, for example. And then they get to penalties, and Paul Ince, Tony Adams allowed Gareth Southgate, a defender who's played in his first tournament, to take a crucial penalty. McManaman, another one, didn't take a penalty. But they seem to generally, that whole team are treated as heroes, when there's some fairly significant errors there that you would say the manager perhaps could have brought players on for penalties or just brought some strikers on, and then the senior pros could have taken the penalties. But it's true that, everyone who's played for Terry Venables more or less seems to say that playing for Venables was great, and Venables was a great manager, and people are more mixed with Hoddle. But in 1998, England still went to tournaments with the press or lots of English people thinking that they had a good chance of winning it. And 1998 was an interesting competition again, because the way that Hoddle husbanded the squad in some ways was really good. Like the players he put on the pitch played well, and they rose to the occasion in the big game against Argentina. And yet they shouldn't really have been playing Argentina, because they shouldn't have got beaten by Romania in the second group game. And why was that? I mean, you can't say that if Hoddle had done one thing, another thing would have happened, but he didn't play David Beckham in the first game or the second game, which seemed quite a lot like an egotistical power play. And he also picked Sheringham, who wasn't in form and had a rubbish club season, instead of Michael Owen, who was in form and devastating. He brought Owen off the bench against Romania. He scored. England lost anyway, but because they lost that game to Romania, they ended up having to play Argentina in the second round because they went through second in the group.
So 1996, you say there was a moment when the England team perhaps didn't get as much heat as they deserved. So would you say that 1998 was the first time that an England squad looked around and thought to themselves, right, okay, we've got this added conflict here, which is the English press?
I think there have been plenty of aggravation prior to then. I mean, if you speak to Graham Taylor, I'm sure he'll tell you that the aggravation was nothing new, and Bobby Robson got plenty of it as well. But what 1996 did was, it wasn't just about football. It captured that moment, that intersection of great football, a tournament in England that went really well, Britpop, Tony Blair, where the mood in the country was different to how it had been for a generation, more or less, in that it wasn't just that people were happy, because obviously individual people can be happy all the time, but there was more this kind of national sense of happiness and England, Great Britain being a good place to be, and this confluence of popular culture with political culture, and all these things happened at the same time. So, and football more or less exists to make people happy, and people were happy at that point, so it became this moment that existed outside of itself. It wasn't just about the football and just about the errors that Terry Venables made and that the players made. Whereas by 1998, things had changed slightly, but even so, that game against Argentina was an epic. It was for me, if your team loses in an epic encounter, there's still something uplifting about that. And I think that people still felt there was regret, but there weren't a lot of brickbats that were handed out subsequently, or at least David Beckham tolerated them all, whereas Hoddle again got away with causing that tie against Argentina. He also said in his book that he should have brought Eileen Drury to France sooner, and so he didn't get any blame for that either. And who knows what wonders Eileen Drury could have wrought to help England out. And Alan Shearer was another one who got away with it. If you're, like I am, a fan of celebrated disallowed goals, where the player scores, he goes into the crowd, he swings his shirt around his head, he does all those things, and then realises sometime later that the goal has been disallowed. One of the all-time great ones of those is Sol Campbell scores a header against Argentina, and he's, this guy, I feel I almost start crying even thinking about it. He's experiencing the moment of his life. His hands are in the air, his eyes are closed, he's absolutely buzzing, and it turns out that Alan Shearer has elbowed the Argentina goalkeeper, and the goal is disallowed. It's on YouTube, it's hilarious, but at the same time, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And in turn, that makes it even more hilarious. And that's what football's all about. But Shearer got no heat for a completely unnecessary barge on the goalkeeper and getting that goal disallowed. Whereas David Beckham, if you think about that afterwards, what went on, I think people have almost forgotten. It wasn't just effigies in pubs. It was actually a targeted and institutional attack. There was a headline, I think, in the Mirror saying, "Still bitter, take your fury out on our Beckham dartboard." Then there was another headline later on, "Hate mob targets Beckham family." Hate mob targets Beckham family. Are you kidding me? And then outside Mansfield Road Baptist Church, there was one of those boards, "God forgives even David Beckham." And which is quite funny when you think about it, really. And when you think about where David Beckham is now and the things that he has been forgiven for subsequently, that you might consider to be more significant than flicking the boot at Diego Simeone.
To what extent did Glenn Hoddle fan the flames around David Beckham at that point? Because he wasn't exactly overly protective of him in the immediate post-match interviews of that Argentina game.
No. And I don't think they got on too well, if all the stories that you hear are to be believed. The volley, they were trying the volley from the corner move, and Beckham couldn't do it. And Glenn Hoddle said, whatever, it's something like, "You're not quite good enough to do this kind of skill." And lots of players say that about Glenn Hoddle, but one of the things he wanted them to know was that he was better at football than they were. And in a sense, that's not a terrible thing, that you should respect your manager. And that was one of Glenn Hoddle's things. One of the reasons you would respect Glenn Hoddle, one of the things you would listen to Glenn Hoddle was that he was a good player. Although I'd say that David Beckham's career stacks up fairly well against Glenn Hoddle's career. But yeah, it's true that, I mean, Glenn Hoddle didn't want to accept any of the blame himself because that's not what he did. Perhaps, I don't know, perhaps it was, in fact, a sin that Glenn Hoddle had committed in a previous life that made him make these errors, that made him get beaten. I mean, who's to say? Who's to say? But I think that, yeah, he didn't protect Beckham, but I'm not sure that there was very much he could have done because we've seen what our tabloid culture is like, and our tabloid culture attacks people now, even now where we're supposed to have evolved and be slightly more responsible. Our tabloid culture is attacking people viciously for doing a lot less than David Beckham did. On the other hand, it makes you wonder quite how Harry Kane would have coped with that, given how upset he got about a goal that he did or didn't score, and a joke about him not doing much against Chris Smalling in the Cup semi-final. If you compare what he got to this, then you wonder quite how he would have handled that.
I think Beckham's recovery from what happened in 1998 is like the hallmark of a truly great sports person, and like whatever the debates about the order of that Manchester United midfield, or like who was the best of that Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, Keane midfield, and you know, they were this perfect combination. He might have been the hardest working, even in a battle against Roy Keane. It certainly wasn't the most talented. That would have been Giggs or Scholes. But what he recovered from versus what everybody else has had to go through makes him a truly great sports person.
100%. And people forget that because he's now David Beckham in inverted commas with capital letters and italics and underlined. People forget that David Beckham was a brilliant football player. And the following season, when United won the treble, he was possibly United's greatest ever player. United's best player in the greatest ever season delivered by a British club. And that is very significant. And it's not, people forget that he wasn't just about the crosses, and he wasn't just about the work. He was about someone who could put it all together and deliver in the biggest moments. David Beckham's best game for United was probably the game against Juventus when United came back from 2-0 down to get into the final of the Champions League. He took the two corners under pressure with which United won the Champions League. He scored against Arsenal in the Cup semi-final. I mean, the list goes on, and I think what you've got is with David Beckham, with Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, is Alex Ferguson taking very, very different personalities and using his ability to hone them into these maniacal, insane competitors who were never satisfied unless they were winning, and were able to find the calmness under pressure, like the stillness in the mayhem that enables you to deliver and to perform your skill at clutch, basically. And there aren't very many people that are able to do that. And what Beckham got, the kind of hatred that Beckham was getting early in that part of the season, I guess came with an upside as well, in that there was a lot of people that hated him, but it meant that the people that loved him gave him more love than he would ordinarily have got, which might have been some kind of buzz also. And if you're able to channel the hatred into performance, as a lot of the best sportsmen are, I mean, you see it, Chris Eubank is a good example of that, someone who was able to absorb the hatred, absorb it and then reflect it back out as power or strength or whatever you want to call it. And that requires a phenomenal mental strength and fibrous character. Not everyone can cope with that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you compare that to the current situation with Raheem Sterling, and it seems that the majority of the public, or potentially, maybe it isn't a majority of the public, maybe it's just a majority of the public who use apps like Twitter and stuff like that, seem to have resisted the tabloid campaign against Raheem Sterling. Was that the same in '98? Was the British public as receptive to tabloid headlines as they are now, or a lack of reception? Were they kind of resistant to these sort of campaigns against players like David Beckham?
It's harder to know because I guess we weren't wasting our lives on Twitter at that point. Yeah. So we didn't have quite such an obvious gauge of what people are thinking. I felt like most sensible people clearly could see that Beckham had made a mistake. He got sent off, and that didn't mean that those things happen in a game of football. So it's hard to see whether, because you don't go to football matches, and football matches create a very particular kind of environment. So if you go to a football match and your team is playing against David Beckham, and you can see a potential weak point in David Beckham, if you get after David Beckham, it doesn't mean that you believe all the tabloid stuff. It means that you've sensed a weakness, and that's what football is partly about. It's exploiting the weaknesses of your opponents, and not just their weaknesses on the pitch, but any emotional weakness you might have. So I don't think that necessarily that Steven Gerrard's slipping is why Liverpool didn't win the league. But when I was at Anfield as a supporter the next season, of course I was part of the United end that was getting after Steven Gerrard, that saw him then get sent off 30 seconds after he came on, because that's part of football. It's part of exploiting the weakness of your opponents, whether you believe it or not. The Raheem Sterling thing is different, though, because we're talking about racism. We're not talking about exploiting the weakness of an opponent. We're talking about dog whistle racism, and we're talking about outward, obvious, in-your-face racism. So at that point, there becomes no excuse for anyone to play on that kind of weakness and to believe and absorb what the tabloids are telling them about Raheem Sterling, because racism is the greatest evil in our society, and there's just no excuse for it. So when Raheem Sterling, for example, goes to Burnley, he's got no form with Burnley. He's done nothing to Burnley supporters. Burnley fans booing Raheem Sterling is inexcusable for that reason. And that's not quite the same as what happened to David Beckham. But I think the most sensible people, of course, can see what the tabloids are doing with Raheem Sterling, and not just Raheem Sterling. After England lost to Iceland, I think Carl Walker got hounded for, I think he said he'd rather be on holiday than be with England, or something like that, a text message he sent, and Dele Alli went on holiday, and that was unacceptable. And whereas Roy Hodgson, for example, who, if you were to say who was at fault for England getting beaten by Iceland, I would certainly say most of the blame there goes to Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson mainly got away without that kind of aggravation. Harry Kane mainly got away without that kind of aggravation. And it was actually the players of colour who sort of bore the brunt of the tabloid fury for that, for their insubordination during the competition, and then for daring to enjoy themselves after the competition. And I think most people are able to see that for what that is. And what you've got now is you've got an England team that is full of players of colour and full of white players, but also full of players of colour, but is more likeable than any England team has been for a long time. And most sensible people are able to see, actually, these guys are putting it all out there. They're enjoyable to watch. They actually give the sense that they're enjoying themselves. And I think that's quite important as a supporter as well, that where you see that the players of your team are enjoying this amazing privilege, that is quite compelling and quite contagious. And people see that that's what's happening. They've got Gareth Southgate, a manager who's allowing them to express themselves, who doesn't at the moment seem to be bowed by the pressure and bowed by the demands of the press. And what you're seeing is it's actually working quite nicely. They might go and it might be a disaster, but actually the England team are quite a positive advert for England as a country, and they're quite actually the opposite of what the tabloid press have been telling us. And it's quite interesting with the tabloid press because it doesn't come from the sports writers. It comes from people that have just got to write an article. I mean, I don't know quite how the instructions to write this kind of article are dispersed. Go and write something nasty about Raheem Sterling. Can we have a dog whistle about Dele Alli, please? But the sports pages that are read by sports fans are not really like that. And actually, the thing that I'm now thinking is it would be really nice if Gareth Southgate said, do you know what, Mail? Do you know what, Sun? I'm not going to give you any interviews. You're banned from all my press conferences, so you stop racially abusing my players. And I think if Gareth Southgate did that, I think there'd be quite a lot of support for him, because the sense that you get is that people have had enough of this.
That would be amazing. I can't see it happening just yet, because the fear of retribution and the backlash as soon as anything goes wrong would be, you know, it's so predictable that that backlash would be so violent and so virulent that Southgate would be really risking something. And yet it feels like maybe this is a moment in history where people are actually willing to take those risks. You think about what's happening in the States with their athletes standing up and taking a stand and actually standing for something that they believe in. That maybe Southgate and this England team might be capable of doing that. On the field, apart from the fact that they seem to be enjoying themselves and actually being able to express themselves as a team with individual identities, you do get the sense that this is actually a very talented group of players. I'm just not quite sure if they're maybe at the same stage as the 98 team were in terms of their development, that they're not quite there as a grown-up team just yet.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, Gareth Southgate was saying that, said yesterday that they're not the finished article and they're not close to the finished article. And that's true. I mean, in the end, that 1998 team, they had Paul Ince, they had Alan Shearer, they had Michael Owen, they had David Beckham, they had Tony Adams. They had proper, serious players in that generation of football. The current England team has players that would like to become that, but they don't have any world-class players at their peak, not one. They don't have a single player who has done it, I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting someone, but I don't think they've got anyone who has turned it on in the later stages of the Champions League yet. They haven't got many medals between them. They haven't played in many big games between them. But, and this is a good but, if you catch them on a good day, they are a hard night for anyone. I think the problem might be keeping out the better teams. So when they play Germany, Brazil, whoever it happens to be, France, they're not going to have a lot of the ball because they don't have midfielders that are capable of keeping the ball. They could annihilate any defence on the break, but the problem is, are they capable of absorbing the kind of pressure that you would need to absorb for that tactic to work? They probably aren't, but they are able to compete with those teams because none of the teams that we mention are that good. So if someone says to you they know who's going to win the World Cup, this particular World Cup, I mean, they're making it up because Germany, France, Brazil are all roughly as good as each other, Spain, and could all beat each other on a particular day. And so there's no outstanding team who you think, well, they're just going to mow through the opposition. But I think that England are capable of giving any of those teams a game. It's not a 50-50 game, it's a 70-30 game. But we've seen much worse teams beat much better teams where the standards are relative. England's any of the favourites. So it is possible. I wouldn't be that surprised if England beat Belgium or got a draw with Belgium and did enough to win the group and then earn themselves a slightly easier route through the competition. They're not going to win it because in the end you probably have to beat a team that is better than you in 3 consecutive rounds, and that is unlikely. But you just don't know how it's going to work out because you never know how the route's going to open up. Maybe you'll get to play in 1990. England got to the semi-finals, and who had they played? I mean, they played Belgium in the quarterfinal in the last 16, who they beat with the last second goal. They were lucky. Then they were lucky to beat Cameroon in the quarterfinals, and all of a sudden they're in the semi-finals. So you're never quite sure how the tournament's going to pan out. But again, I guess that England team had better players than this one, but it didn't probably have its pace or its attacking variety. And so I don't think anyone will particularly want to play England.
Daniel, great stuff. Enjoy the entire tournament. We'll check in with you real soon. Thanks a million.
See you again. Bye-bye.
That's all very interesting.
It is, yeah. It is interesting to hear kind of, and it's not a surprising thing to hear about the relationship between the public and this England team. The way they kind of seem happy, the way they kind of seem content, the way they seem to be enjoying their football, or at least the warm-up section of it. And I wonder how much of that is deliberate, how much of that is Gareth Southgate deliberately chatting to these players and saying, listen, enjoy this, ignore what people are saying about you, go and embrace the moment, however far we get. I've experienced the brunt of what can happen when things go badly in tournaments, and I guess the horrible experiences that Gareth Southgate has had as a player maybe stand him in good stead in this sort of role. Maybe that's what you need to be as a manager of a talented group of players, is just to tell them, it could be worse. It could be worse.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the disallowed goal that Saul Campbell scored.
Yeah, I watched it last night.
Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's worth digging out. We'll tweet a link to it.
Yeah, Saul Campbell's actually...
The elbow isn't that bad from Shearer. It's not like a proper Alan Shearer elbow to the nut.
No, but I don't necessarily agree with Daniel there to the point where it was needless. I'm not sure Saul Campbell would have scored the goal had Shearer not come in and cleaned out the goalkeeper beforehand.
It always helps.
It definitely did help in this occasion.
All right, let's move on to GAA. We're going to hear from the defeated Wicklow manager, John Evans, a little bit later on in the show. But I'm delighted to say we've got one of the stories of the summer with us this morning. It's the Offaly football manager, Paul Rouse. Paul, good morning to you.
Good morning.
That's a pretty exciting couple of weeks that you put down.
Yeah, it's been, I suppose, mad things happening often. And it's been great fun, really great fun.
You obviously had the draw to the job. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How that kind of manifested itself, and when the possibility arises, you're like, yeah, I am going to go for this. Why not?
Well, I suppose the what happened with the previous management and the county board is well documented, and I think it's also fairly clear that there wasn't the most extraordinary queue of people to take this job. There was Offaly were in a position where we had just lost to Wicklow, who'd finished bottom of the National Football League, and it didn't seem enormously promising. So I suppose that's how I ended up there.
And it didn't take you a long time to decide when the opportunity arose. You weren't thinking, oh geez, I don't want to get involved here. It was like, yeah, I will do it. Like, I guess I'm struck by that the quote about the people in the arena are the ones that actually, when it comes down to it, I meant to look this up before we came. I would definitely be failing one of your exams right now if I was one of your students. But you know the one I'm talking about. It's
yes.
LeBron James has it tattooed on his arm.
Yeah. And I really like that quote, and I really like the fact that like what was to be lost here? In a way, you look at a situation where expectations probably couldn't have been lower. It was, the sun was shining. There was no slog involved in this. It's there's a great group of players there, just a really, really good group of lads who want to play for Offaly and who have a lot of talent. And obviously, central to this are the people who were involved in the management team, like Stephen Darby, who is an All-Ireland medal winner with Offaly and trained Road to win multiple county championships, and my brother John, who trained Tullamore to win the county championship and involved with Knockbeg College when they won the All-Ireland schools, and Alan McNamee, who played for Offaly with such distinction for so long, and again has kind of a fairly upsetting 10 county championships with Road. It's been a huge group effort over the last 4 weeks, and an incredible amount of fun. Like, it's just a brilliant life experience.
Yeah, I presume that was the fact that, you know, it's so rare that your county calls and you can actually answer it, particularly at a certain stage of life. You think, okay, I'm not actually going to make it now as a footballer, but this opportunity arises.
Player manager, Jar.
There you go. That's the one last twist to the story that we have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But that must have been the main draw to it. It's like, well, yeah, okay, like there's a lot to learn here, and actually, I will actually then get to experience what this is like, and I can give something back in a meaningful way.
Well, again, I wasn't good enough to play inter-county football. I played a lot of club football, but I just wasn't good enough. And I suppose you get an opportunity like this, which it's an interim job. It was to kind of stabilise things, to steady the ship, to get players back in, and to see could we win a match. And I suppose to the extent that we've been successful, that's what's after happening. And it's been great fun. Like, it's been really, really good fun. And I know that's kind of a cliche to say that, or I'm sure it sounds somewhat glib, but it's just a fact.
Is it addictive, Paul? Is there a buzz there that?
Oh yeah, it's totally addictive. Absolutely addictive. And it's if you see. You can find yourself getting drawn into the world of preparation and thinking endlessly about how to win a match or how to improve a team. It's an inevitable thing, I think, if you've got pride in yourself and pride in what you want to achieve or what you might consider achievable, then you find time.
And what's the addictive nature about it? Is it kind of the problem-solving nature where you have a team that needs to improve, or is it more the feeling you felt at the weekend, that adrenaline rush of getting a championship win?
I'd say it's a bit of both. I think the adrenaline rush at the weekend will probably die off at some stage, but there's no immediate sign of that. The idea of improvement is something which, well, if you go back down to the basics here, if there's a group of players who want to improve, then they kind of improve themselves if you stand back and give them the space to do it, and look for ways to help in some ways. But ultimately, this is decided by the desires and the ambitions of players and their ability, and that's what these lads have done. Like, they're a really committed bunch of players who haven't had it easy, and I just couldn't speak highly enough for the efforts that they've made for their desire to play for Offaly, for the way that they seek to improve themselves every day, and that's been really instructive. And I knew some of the players before I went in. I played with some of them when I was finishing up. They were starting, and I played against others of them in club football. But most of the lads I'd seen playing for Offaly and seen in club games in Offaly, but I hadn't even spoken to them before, and I didn't know them on a personal level. But you find when you spend a bit of time with them and you end up chatting with them just how serious they are about football, and just how proud they are to play for Offaly, and how much they want to improve. And that, again, as I say, I repeat myself, that's the key for me.
That's obviously not something you had a whole heap of time to do, to get to know them. How did you go about that? What was that process like?
I suppose it was in the first instance a lot of phone calls, and in the second instance just hanging around training and trying to talk to lads during training and before training and after training, and going and doing one-on-one sessions with players. And I suppose the more time you spend with somebody, if you watch and you listen and you talk, the more you get to know somebody, and that can only help. I mean, knowledge can only help.
When did the confidence that the performance that you saw at the weekend, when did you start to believe that might be possible?
From the first night that we all got together, because there was a desire to draw a line under the past, and a desire to see could we win a match, and that was evident from the very start. I would say it was evident from the phone calls to the players previous to that, but it was absolutely evident the first night we got together.
And then in the middle of the game, at what point in the game do you kind of start to think, we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing, everybody understands exactly what the plan is, and we're executing it, to use a terrible sports cliche?
I suppose before half time, when we'd struggled really in the first half to do what we wanted to do, and we'd worked really hard, and we were trying really hard, and that was kind of the bottom line, to try really hard. And again, it's a cliche and it's so basic and so obvious, but they pushed on a little bit just before half time, and in the middle of the second half, down a man, there were a lot of opportunities to fold the tent at that point, and just to say, feel sorry for ourselves, and just say that this is gone now, or we had the ready-made excuse there, and they decided not to. And that was, to me, that's the best thing. To me, this is, the fact that those lads decided that they were actually just going to go for this now, and that was definitely the best thing about it.
What's that changing room like at full time?
It took us a while to get in there. There was a lot of Offaly people on the field afterwards, and a lot of friends and family, and we were a long time before we got in there. And this comes down to it. Offaly haven't won too many championship matches in the last 10 years. One Leinster championship match and maybe a qualifier. So there's a lot of parents and, I suppose, girlfriends and wives and of the players who have suffered with their and seeing people with their friends and clubmates who don't want to see their friends get another kicking. And so there was a lot of Offaly people on the field after the game, and I have to say there was a great moment just at half time when the Offaly team were going in at half time, and the way the Offaly crowd responded to them was really wonderful, and it meant an awful lot to the players, and that was great. In the changing room at the end of the game, we lads were very happy, very, very happy.
It strikes me a lot of the times when we're on this side talking about what's going on and speculating about motivation and preparation and what's going to happen and all the things that we get involved in as conversationalists around sport, that we don't really know. Most of it is guesswork, and I'm struck by the fact that you've kind of slid really quickly from one side to the other. Has it been a culture shock for you to be on the inside and the other side, and actually, or could you imagine what this life was like before you got there?
Well, I've been involved in football teams and hurling teams all my life, Ger. Like it's fair enough at that club level, and I suppose this is going to stand me up for ridicule, but it's more recently with a girls' football team in Dublin, my under-13 girls team, and like, why do people play? Like, what are you interested in? What are the motivations of people? I think there's a basic instinct of a desire to play and to compete, and I think you take those two things, and they're the fundamental of every team. Like a kind of a bit of fun in playing, and a desire to be competitive as you play. And I think that's what every team wishes. And on what the logical third step of that is to try and enjoy winning, if you can find a way to do that. But without the first two, the third doesn't happen. And so have I found it a change? Look, it's entirely different in the sense that there's a huge. There's a huge thing to manage here in terms of wider management team, strength and conditioning, nutrition, physio, dealing with county board, dealing with media, dealing with everything. Like it's a big undertaking, but I'm fairly organised, so that kind of helps. And I've made loads of mistakes, absolutely loads of mistakes, since I started. But I'm finding out as I go along.
Just one final one for me, Paul, because you'd often be in studio with us chatting about the disconnect between the club player and the elite player. And it seems from the way you're talking there that all hope isn't lost, that the very same principles of getting humans to enjoy themselves in a sporting sense isn't that different between the under-13 team that you've been training and the inter-county senior team that you've been training. Of course, there's a whole pile of logistics and a whole pile of added inventiveness that is required, but ultimately it's getting a group of humans out there to enjoy themselves and to try and get the best out of themselves.
Yeah, and look. There's no sense that anybody here has any sort of monopoly on how to do this and who's right and who's wrong. I mean, I have my opinions on that, and I'm as entitled to be wrong about things as anybody else, and I'm fairly good at that too. But what I do think is that if you go about things like we play Clare in 10 days' time. Clare are finished third in Division 2 in the National Football League. We were nearly relegated from Division 3. There could be a thing. They obviously are a very, very talented set of players with a very good manager who made an All-Ireland quarter-final, and we could end up talking later in the summer, at which point you will say to me, well, that was some nonsense you were talking a couple of weeks before you played Clare. But I can only say it as honestly as I see it, and again, it comes down to whether you want to be in a room or not, and whether you want to be on a field or not. And if you really want to be there, and if you're really given to do something, and you really want to improve, well then, so why would you be afraid of it? Like what is there really to be afraid of? And is there not to be joy in this? Won't we all not be doing any of this soon enough, and won't we all want it back when it's gone? And if that's the principle that you operate on, whether it's a kind of a club team or a county team, then is it not transferable?
Yeah, it sounds transferable to all walks of life, to be honest, Paul. It sounds like you're having the summer of your life, which is great.
Well, nothing beats playing, Jared. Nothing beats playing, and again, that's another cliche, but it's true. Nothing beats being on the field with a pair of boots. But as a life experience goes, it just really could not have been any better. It could not have been any better so far, and it's even like we go training again this evening, and I can't wait for it. And we I've met a whole load of people that I didn't know before, and it's been just I wouldn't say the summer of my life, but I would say it's been hugely enjoyable so far.
Well, listen, congratulations so far, and long may the summer continue. Best of luck against Clare, Paul. Thanks a million for talking to us.
Thanks very much, lads. Thank you.
That's Paul Rouse there. The quote that I was talking about is Teddy Roosevelt quote. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds.
That sounds like one hell of a painful tattoo for LeBron James.
I think he's just got the credit belongs to the man in the arena, who is actually in the arena. But I'm pretty sure LeBron has it. Anyway, it did strike me that that's the ultimate. Yeah, I will take that job, and I will go and do that, and I will step in and help my county when they need me. What did you do when your county called?
Exactly, that's...
I was snarky on Twitter.
That was good for the soul right there, listening to Paul Rouse talking about that. It's encouraging stuff. Clare and Tullamore in a couple of weeks. You can be sure and certain that the attendance at Tullamore is going to be a hell of a lot higher than it would have been in different circumstances.
That's the thing, you can see Hull County getting behind that. Yeah. And you can see him getting sucked into taking it next year, and it is being something that he does for a while. It was just to stabilise the job. It's actually, when it was a great question, is this addictive? It's yeah, it is. Can it be addictive in the bleak midwinter as well? It probably could be. I'm sure winning championship games is that drug, though. That's very, very contributing to all of that sort of stuff. We're going to Adrian Barry in Norway to talk about the Irish women's national team. First, here's Karen Duggan talking about Ireland's defeat to Norway last Friday night.
Obviously very disappointed to concede from two set pieces. It's not a very Irish trait. It's not a trait that we want in our game, so we're disappointed with that. We came into the group, Norway were top seeds. We knew it was going to be tough. They're not top seeds for no reason, but we thought that we'd come, we set up well, we trained well all week, but when we gave away, kind of the first one was pretty sloppy, I suppose, and it's hard to come back against a team like that, but we'll regroup now and we'll look forward to the next one. We'll learn a lot from those mistakes, hopefully, and regroup for Tuesday, and hopefully we'll go away and we'll get something out of the game. That still has to be our ambition. We know they're a good team, but we also know from the game today that it is possible for us to get a result out there.
Can you improve much in the space of a few days?
Of course, you can always improve. We'll analyse the game. We'll all analyse ourselves, our own performances, and hopefully learn something. We'll do a lot of work on that. We'll recover well, but I think a lot of the work now will be done in the classroom, kind of seeing where we went wrong and what we can do to go over there and get a result. But we're going out to get a result.
Karen Duggan speaking with Maura Trassa after the game at Tala, where Ireland were beaten 2-0. Adrian Barry is in Stavanger for the return leg. Adrian, what's Stavanger like?
I got here about 10 o'clock last night, George, so I have absolutely no idea. I haven't been into the city yet. The only thing I know about Norway so far is that the rumours about it costing €10 for a beer are absolutely true. And the taxis are a bit of a rip-off. So that's my sort of dump of Norwegian information so far. Yeah, well, it floats on a bed of oil, so everybody's really rich. That's the whole point out in Norway. Yeah, and actually Stavanger is one of the areas that's benefited most from that. It was like a sleepy little town up until I think the late 60s when oil was found in this area somewhere around, and actually they made Stavanger a bit of a centre for it. They've eased off on that in the last little while, so how that impacts on a city of about 250,000 people, I don't know, we'll see over the next while, but I haven't seen it. Outside of doing a few bits of Google images, it looks very typically Norwegian, Jar. And what are we expecting from Ireland tonight? It's not a home and away. This is obviously part of the qualifying campaign, but it's unusual for a team to be able to lose 3 days ago 2-0 and then to try and resurrect the campaign with an away victory, which is essentially what they need tonight, right? Yeah, that side of it writes itself. In terms of the reasons why Ireland might not be able to get it done tonight, there are loads of them. Injuries, suspension. Louise Quinn, one of the most important players, you'll have seen photographs probably of her over the last 24 hours. She's going to wear a face mask tonight after breaking her nose in the in the first leg. So the reasons why Ireland might not be able to get it done are plentiful. There's any amount of excuses if they want to reach for them after this game tonight. And it is really, well, it's not a playoff, it is kind of all or bust. If they don't get it done tonight, as in if they don't win, it means that the final group game against Northern Ireland later in the year is a bit of a dead rubber, really. But on the other side of things, they listen to Anya O'Gorman speaking this week. She makes her 100th cap tonight. Ireland don't get themselves into this position very often. It's 10 years ago, I think, since they were last in this sort of position with the opportunity to actually qualify for a major tournament, which they've never done before. And by the way, Norway are almost one of the aristocrats of football. They're former world champions, former European champions. They've been there before. They've got it done before. Ireland have come close previously to getting it done before, and that was about 10 years ago. So that's really the opportunity from an Irish point of view. Can they almost shed all those easy excuses ahead of this game tonight in terms of the playing personnel, in terms of the, like we saw, the difference in quality between the teams last Friday night? Can they shed all of that stuff and actually just sort of tap into the fact that this is a bit of a one-off opportunity in a lot of ways, like it is a bit of a playoff almost in a lot of ways, and sort of embrace that and go for it?
Yeah, they're massive underdogs obviously tonight, so we would expect Norway to win this game and to end the campaign. It's been a campaign of progress, but ultimately they're going to feel disappointed that they weren't able to turn the early brilliant results into qualification.
Yeah, and that was exactly it. Like, if you spool back a couple of months, there was the draw with Holland that gave everybody, this was where the fountain of hope essentially had come from. And yeah, the back-to-back defeats have definitely put a bit of a pen in that bubble, I guess. And in a lot of ways, there was a lot of people that left Tala last Friday night that were kind of feeling that actually, like, 2-0 was not a bad result in the context of what had gone on. Both goals from set pieces will have been a frustration, I've no doubt, for Colin Bell and a lot of the players and coaching staff you might see sort of floating around behind me here from time to time. I'm sure that would be an absolute frustration for them. But at the same time, you know, as I said, if they can try and one of the other positives is that they now have a bank of 90 minutes of playing against this top class Norwegian team. I know Colin Bell has experience of coaching over here, but like, nothing beats seeing what their tactics are about. He spoke before the first of these games last week and said that actually Norway, they may change their personnel a little bit, but actually they're unlikely to really change their tactics overly. So again, that's like, if we expect the same sort of approach tonight, is there something we can do that maybe counteracts that?
Yeah. All right. Adrian, enjoy your day. Wonder what time's kick-off?
It's 5 o'clock Irish time.
And they're an hour ahead of us, an hour behind?
It'll be 6 p.m. here. So yeah, there's a bit of talk as well about the pitch being Astro tonight. So again, I mean, I guess that favours the team that can play a lot of football. Maybe that's not something we can overly hold on to from an Irish point of view. But it's 5 o'clock Irish time. Let's hope we can get it done. And what are the sights of Stavanger that you're off to see for the rest of your day? There is, I'm not going to get to see it, unfortunately, I don't think, on this trip, but there is this is worth a Google image, by the way. If Tommy's quick on the button there, he'll be able to get it done. Pulpit Rock is about, he's on the phone. Listen, that's the millennials, sure, what can you do? Pulpit Rock is about 30 kilometres out the road from here, and it's like something you might see in the Grand Canyon with water, essentially. It's pretty impressive. It's a fjord. Stavanger is not, I presume. It's Pulpit Rock is in a fjord, but it's a rock that juts out into the fjord, and that's pretty good. Pretty spectacular. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, if Tommy wasn't sort of texting whoever there, he'd be able to sort of bring that to our viewers. But there we go. He's setting up our next guest, though, so don't worry about it. No, fair enough. Yeah, that's reasonable. You're not going to go and see that now. You're like going to. Well, it's 30 kilometres away, and I'm doing bits and pieces with Aviva today, so we'll be out and around the town. We'll be chatting to Megan Campbell, who's out injured, unfortunately. You know, one of the disappointing stories from an Irish point of view. She's just coming back from an ACL. She's, I think, about 6 weeks post-surgery, and hoping to be back in probably the same distance to the other side. So we'll be chatting to Megan and getting her thoughts. Nobody better to know exactly what's going on with that Irish camp. And we'll be pitch side for the game as well. So yeah, but it's an early game, Ger. No chance to get to. I mean, you're asking me if I'm going to the pub and have a few beers. That ain't happening. At a tenner a pop. I know you aren't, but thanks very much, Adrian Barry, for joining us from Stavanger, the home of the Norwegian oil industry. Yeah, wow. Imagine that, living in a town and it's like, oh, we've just discovered oil beneath us. Now everybody is going to get very, very rich and very, very quickly.
So O2 have been living in Stavanger in 1966 or whenever that did happen.
They just nationalised all the oil so that everybody benefited. It didn't actually matter if you lived in Stavanger.
True, but
It's a good idea.
That little fjord thing sounds cool as well, though, so I want to live there.
Let's move on. John Evans is the Wicklow football manager, obviously. They're one of the first teams out of the championship, unfortunately, after the weekend's events, and I'm delighted to say he's with us now. John, good morning to you. Thanks for taking the call.
Morning, Tommy. How are you doing?
It's Ger and Eoin here. How are you doing?
Oh, sorry, Eoin. How are you keeping?
Good, good stuff, yeah. How are you getting on, more to the point, after the weekend?
Yeah, okay, not too bad. Alive and kicking, thankfully. I suppose we started the championship, in great gusto and taking on a Division 3 side in Offaly. And after a long sojourn of extra time, we got home and hosed out of it. And it was a great start to the championship. And we worked extremely hard because we did such a bad winter, and training was horrible and conditions were horrible, and we weren't getting results either, and didn't play our full complement of games. So we were full of energy, I suppose, and wanted to have a good cut. But unfortunately, the next two draws didn't go our way, Tommy. In the so far as that when you're it's grand taking on a Division 3 team, but taking on the Division 1 teams are it's nigh and impossible, taking on. But it's, obviously the Dubs. But Cavan now, who have returned, who were in Division 1, down to 2 and back up to Division 1, so taking on that type of artillery is a bridge too far for Wicklow at the moment, anyway.
What are you thinking before that Dublin game, John? Because it seems like, not a hopeless cause, but it seems like a very, very big outside shot that a team like Wicklow could, at this moment in time, be competitive against Dublin. Is it very, very hard to keep up spirits in the camp, even despite the fact that you were just coming off a championship win?
It's hard to believe this, but it was actually exciting. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant challenge. And I suppose the fact that Wicklow are neighbours of Dublin as well, there was absolutely no fear element. They played with abandon. They went at the game. I remember the start of the game. We had 4 or 5 chances, and while we hadn't scored, we went very close. And the whole right throughout the whole game, we kept playing, and they liked it, they loved it. Maybe it was the fact that the victory wasn't in sight, and they could play to the fact that they could enjoy themselves and give it their full lot, I suppose.
Is that, in your opinion, the very best approach to playing against Dublin, just to play your own game, to go out and attack rather than set up shop with every single man behind the ball?
No, absolutely not. It depends on who you are and what you are, where you are. I mean, if you're a Division 4 or 3 team, you certainly, your chances of winning, and I suppose I set out my stall in the start against Dublin and saying, hey, they could beat us by 10 or 20 or 30 points if they wanted to. And, from there on, everything is a bonus. So, but if you're a Division 2 team and Division 1 team, you certainly would be taking a completely different approach to it than you would if you were a Division 4 and 3 team.
John, you mentioned not playing your full complement of league games. I mean, ultimately, that decision, it takes away from you the opportunity of getting 2 70-minute matches for your paddle, where, as the league progresses, you're trying new players and new stuff out, but it also leaves you at the bottom of the table because you don't get the opportunity to win any of those games. Did that have a knock-on impact into the summer?
It did for a while, I'd have to say, yes. That for instance, in the championship game, our last outing against Cavan, we had 5 new starters. We had and 5 new subs that came on. So there was 10 guys there, and you like to see competitive. These boys under a competitive edge or trial, I should say, and they certainly, the extra games do help you. But look, it was such a horrible winter for us. And I mean, most people had snow for once. We had snow bloody well 3 times, and it went on and on. I took a photograph going over the Wicklow Gap 3 weeks afterwards, and there was still 2 feet of snow there. But where we were training in Balnakill, It's up so high, and the conditions were treacherous to even get there. Not a mind train. So a lot of our training had to be reverted to lower ground, we'll call it. And yeah, it certainly affected not play. The question you asked is not playing those games sort of to the double-edged sword on us that cut us both ways. No games and not being able to train.
What does that do then to the players group in terms of morale once you get into the summertime? Because obviously now it's still fairly early in the summer, and that if anybody wanted to potentially go to America or whatever, they still have time to go ahead and do that. We're still only at the 12th of June now. But was there any issues with that post the league when there was fairly demoralising in terms of training, in terms of matches, that there would have been an issue with players leaving the squad?
The way to answer that is that we made a lot of strides this year insofar as that, number one, we had all the clubs with us this year. Every last club was represented, and that's a big step going forward for Wicklow. The second thing is that not one player left the panel to go to America. They stayed around. Yes, guys got injured and one thing and another, but nobody went travelling. And it was a big part of when I came to Wicklow is that I emailed players that were abroad that had gone travelling, and there's a good few players returning now this summer. So, look, I think the morale was absolutely top class. I will say that when these boys put their shoulder to the wheel, their heads together, the clubs together, not going to on J1s even and travelling to America. So we were rock solid that way. There was no problem with morale in Wicklow, guaranteed.
And next year, John, are you signed up already for next year? Do you know, is that going to be part of your plans?
Well, all that is supposed to be sanctioned because, look, I'm in there for a 2-year stint. I suppose I've taken on the job with that in mind, introducing new players and coaching them and taking the under-20s. And there's quite an exciting bunch of players coming through, and I'd like to be able to handle them. And that's the commitment I gave in the start, anyway. Whether it could be allowed to go forward or not, I don't know. Because I like to review it after every year.
That's fair enough. One thing we did want to talk to you about was the way that the championship is structured now. Dublin obviously are playing 2 of their 3 games in the Super 8s in Croker, and it looks like the Ulster Championship, the match against the Ulster champions, so that would be Donegal or Fermanagh, will end up being at the neutral venue of Croke Park. As an inter-county manager who has come up against the Dubs and understands exactly how powerful they are, even out of Croker, what's your take on the fairness of Dublin having 2 of their 3 games in the Super 8s in Croker?
Well, the first thing I would say is that Dublin are so good that if you start worrying about fairness and they have other advantages, whether it be financial or every county, every single county, and I know when I was with Tipperary and Roscommon and Meath, if you wanted to play in Croke Park, that's the place you play. But whether you say, if you go into the mindset of saying it's an advantage Dublin, you may as well not play football at all. So look, Dublin or Dublin. There's no point in landing everything on Dublin's doorstep. If you get to the Super 8s, you're good enough. If you're in the Super 8s, you need to compete, and the more games you get, the better. Now, where it is a disadvantage, I see, is that weaker teams that wouldn't have a stronger panel, and I'm talking about an extended panel, but that over those 3 games, certainly it's going to be huge impact. But look, Dublin themselves are seeing the guillotine drop on them at the moment with the unfortunate injuries to Cluxton and Jack McCaffrey is back, I know, and a couple of more. But look, it's going to be a test on everybody. But the one thing you don't go into these Super 8s is with a negative mindset.
But do you not think that, say, for example, when you speak about some of the weaker counties there, it's their day out and everybody wants to play in Croke Park, and that's fair enough. But for a county like Donegal or Fermanagh, surely the opportunity of playing them in Enniskillen or in Ballybofey or maybe even Clonus, it's that 2 or 3 point swing, which might actually be the deficit between themselves and Dublin at this point.
Yes, I certainly see it. But my understanding was that there's 1 home, 1 away, and 1 neutral.
But for
now,
Dublin,
I know
it's
the
2
neutral
home essentially.
One is that they're saying that it would be in Croke Park, but that, of course, it's an advantage. You'd like to have the home one. But I think it should be the county's calling on that.
Yeah, well, they should definitely kick up a bit of a stink about it. The trouble is, if you kick up any stink about it, everyone's like, oh, that's, you know, you've got the wrong attitude already. You need strong county boards to do it on the manager's behalf, basically.
Yeah, look, the Super 8s, lads, there is absolutely no doubt it's for the stronger team. It's strong for the team that has not alone a 26, but probably, I would not exaggerate it, but probably a 32 strong panel, so that you can draw and draw and draw for injuries, and indeed rest players, and indeed, you have to plan that way, because you definitely need 32 players going fully fit, ready to rock. Because if you're going to be going into extra time, you're looking at everybody now. And a big thing I'm looking at here is referees. They're now not happy with 3 minutes and 4 minutes. I see 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes now. If there's an injury, of course, but there's 6 or 7 minutes given to games, and the games that are so lopsided. What the hell are they at? Yeah. But you do need a big panel for this extended time, because nowadays, I think in our game against Offaly, we played 102 minutes between normal time, injury time, extra time, injury time, and injury time. So, look, I mean, today's game is no longer just about the 70 minutes. It's you have to have an extendedly strong panel. You have to have really guys really on the day. And if you're going to week after week after week, look at Tipperary, how they, in the hurling, they bellied up because they couldn't keep at it. And any team that's going at it 3 or 4 days, weeks on the trot, with only amateurs, you want a huge panel for it.
Yeah, there's no question, you're right on that one, that the Super 8 is a championship tweak that's definitely going to benefit the stronger counties with a deeper panel. If you could pick one championship tweak that Tom Ryan could come up with, if somehow the GAA were ripping up the championship structure and starting again, what would it be, John?
I'm definitely going to say here a second referee. There's so much stuff missing. The referees are missing so much stuff. This is, I certainly believe that number one, either their umpires or linesmen are not helping them, because they're missing it blatantly obvious. They're missing stuff, and they're not being communicated by linesmen into the referee to say, hey, there's a free here, stop the play, discuss it, and give a verdict on it. That'd be the first thing, that's because it rankles in my mind so much. There's so many dubious calls made. Calls missed, I think. When I say calls missed, fouls missed, and off the ball stuff type of thing, not necessarily, but in the play, the referee is just not seeing obvious fouls. And he can be, he's in amongst 30 guys. He can be unsighted. He can be in position wrong. He just may see it from a different angle. You look at it from the front, it's not a foul. You look from the back, it is a foul.
Yeah.
That'd be my big one. But tweaking anything, I certainly think we've learned from the hurling anyway, that if you go 3 or 4 or 5 weeks on the trot, you're not going to get the performance out of players, and that is the big one. If your energy drops and injuries come in, you're going to see weakened teams. And remember this: you are going to see weakened teams by the third round and facing into an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, no, for sure. John, enjoy your summer off. Thanks very much for talking to us this morning.
Lovely talking to you, lads. Okay.
It's John Evans there, the Wicklow football manager, talking to us after they were unceremoniously dumped out of the championship by Cavan at the weekend. A couple of things we want to talk to you about. The Wilder-Joshua potential for this fight to happen this year has moved forward significantly over the course of the last 24 hours or so. Dan Raphael of ESPN is reporting that a deal has been agreed by Wilder's camp to fight in England. In Britain, might be in Cardiff, I presume it would be in Wembley at this stage, and that it'll be a 2-fight deal with an automatic rematch in the US, irrespective of the results. And they've taken a flat fee. They're not taking a share of the gate. So that's an indication of the fact that they're pretty confident their boy's going to win, and that also they want to get this done. It could be as little as 15 million. I don't understand how the heavyweight championship of the world with 2 proper heavyweight fighters, one of them's going to earn 15 million, which is what, a quarter of what did Conor McGregor make 100 million? Did he make 50 million?
You don't really
50
know.
million.
You don't really know. 100, I'd say, is probably close to the mark.
Certainly he's getting paid more than Deontay Wilder's getting paid to get in the ring with Anthony Joshua. Wilder has been talking himself up.
Nah, baby, you don't see no fear in my eyes. I ain't scared of no man. There's no man I'm afraid of ever on this earth. I wasn't raised like that. I wasn't born like that. It wasn't applied in my heart, baby. This is what I do. No man can ever say he looked into my eyes and seen fear, because fear don't exist there. There's no home for fear in my heart. The things I've been through, the shit I had to go through, fear don't exist in my heart. You better ask about me. That's it, guys. You better ask about.
Well, there you go.
It's okay to be afraid of things.
It's
sometimes we need to feel the fear and do it anyway, right?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see the press around this. Like Joshua kind of will probably be his reaction to Wilder's antics. Like very clearly rehearsed lines there, very clearly lines learned off by heart in case his kind of charisma, his real born natural charisma deserts him at any point.
But Muhammad Ali practices lines.
Yeah,
a lot.
He did, yeah.
But everybody said he was really charismatic. What's wrong with practicing your lines?
Well, you can be charismatic and you can practice your lines, whereas I would suggest that Deontay Wilder's charisma probably couldn't hold a candle to Muhammad Ali's. Ali was a little bit more off the cuff, no?
Like after hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of practice.
Yeah, it's true. It's
taping himself and going, well, no, I'm going to change that.
It's a fairly glaring example, to be honest. One I didn't really think of when I was kind of criticising Deontay Wilder for not being off the cuff.
I'm looking forward to this fight. It doesn't really need that much promotion. It's two fairly evenly matched fighters who we don't know what's going to happen. Wilder might have a bit of an advantage in certain aspects of ring craft, and Joshua seems to have an advantage in terms of power.
It seems, yeah, certainly in terms of form, I would say that the boxing aficionados would be kind of leaning more towards Wilder at this point. It's going to be interesting to see where the fight will actually occur. Will it be Cardiff? Will it be London?
Should be London, wouldn't it?
I presume it's going to be Wembley. It depends what time of the year, don't know. If it's going to be in the depths of winter.
They're talking potentially September, October, although there is a September rematch for Canelo Triple G. So they said that they won't go up against that. So if it's October, then maybe it can't be Wembley.
October is probably just about early enough. If you're moving into November, it's probably got to have the retractable roof, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know, but like if the hometown crowd come out in force, which they will in Wembley and even in the Principality Stadium, then like you'd imagine that'll be a big factor for Joshua. The 2-fight deal is a key part of this, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Back up tomorrow from 7:45. Anthony Moyles is going to be in, and we're going to be updating our football power rankings. Who are the 10 best footballers in the country? Tune in tomorrow at 7:45, and we will reveal that to you. The lads are back in radio tonight from 7 o'clock. They've got their big US Open preview. Ross Munley is going to talk Laois making the Leinster final, and how his teammate Stephen Atreed is doing after his injury at the weekend. To play us out today, though, Kevin Kilban and Team OTB teamed up with the Special Olympics Ireland for a special finishing masterclass last week at Tallaght Stadium. You can get more information about the Special Olympics Ireland Games at irelandgames.ie. Go and have a look.
All right, you're very welcome to Tallaght Stadium for the second of our off-the-ball masterclasses. Once again, we're teaming up with Special Olympics Ireland ahead of the Special Olympics Ireland Games from June 14th to 17th, and the opening ceremony takes place right here at Tallaght Stadium. Kevin Kilban is going to give the football team a few lessons.
Yeah,
rebounds from penalty kicks first up, Kev?
Rebounds from the penalty kick. Well, get it on target first, Nathan. That's all I would say to you. That's what it is. What we're going to do today, we're going to do a masterclass in finishing. 2 points into a corner, 1 point for a goal. If you hit it on a volley, you get 3. So we're going to see overall round, just a bit of a masterclass in finishing. Again, just keeping everybody involved today. So that's what we'll be doing.
All right, it's a beautiful day in Tallaght. Let's get started.
Good. You ready, man? You ready? That's it, get round that goal. No cheating, just say, unlucky. Next one up. Yeah. That's it, wait for the keeper to get ready. Sorry, defender, come on. I did wait for him. Nice and steady, just get a nice, comfortable finish on it. Unlucky. Good. That's 4. Unlucky, around the disc, round the red disc, back in round the red disc. Good. Good save, brilliant keeper. Well done, Dave. Brilliant. Two, was that 2 in the corner? Brilliant. Unlucky. Head over that. Get into it a little bit. Head over it. Good. Unlucky that. Make sure you're hitting that target. Hit the target. Good. Well on, Derek. Brilliant. Good. Derek, absolutely brilliant. Come on, Derek. Oh, brilliant.
All right, Charles, tell us what Kevin Kilban taught you today. Anything?
What Kevin does, just to keep the head down and put the foot, I suppose, straight through the ball. It was a finishing drill, and you just had to stay composed, I suppose.
Jamie, I don't think you needed any lessons. You scored an absolute cracker up to that goal in there.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
What was your technique? What was in your thoughts when that ball came over to you? Was it just like head over the ball, everything that you'd learned before, and just try and hit through it? Is that all it was?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, it's unbelievable. It was a great goal.
Yeah.
And if people want to come and watch
They
the
can.
Provincials, the Ireland Games then, 14th to 17th of June?
14th to the 17th of June, in Abbottstown, in the FAI grounds. So we're thankful to them as well for
brilliant stuff,
for letting them on our pitch.
Whew. Bit wrecked after that now, to be honest. We've had a brilliant day here with thanks to Special Olympics Ireland. Looking forward to the Team Ireland Games, June 14th to 17th, all around Dublin. It's free in. Check out irelandgames.ie. What's the hashtag, Kev?
Hashtag part.
Yeah. We'll bring you